Good afternoon from New York. This is Carol, and you're watching News Always On. The biggest trade war in economic history began on Friday today. China said after Washington and Beijing traded 25% tariff on US $34 billion worth of each other's goods, while analysts warned the dispute was set to run and run. While Zheng Guo, a former deputy Chinese commerce minister, said the conflict would affect the global value chain and people should not expect a swift resolution. The trade war will last for a long time, he said. Now vice chairman of the government-backed China Center for International Economic Exchanges, Wei said that China was prepared to fight to defeat the U.S. At 12 noon Beijing time, Washington made good on its promise to impose fresh tariff on goods it imports from China.
They are worried about certain local economies too dependent on their export. The answer that they have drawn up is twofold. One is to expand domestic consumption. Of course, also find ways around the US. Maybe they can diversify and help diversifying these local economies. And the other one is providing liquidity to do big structural changes in the economy. And we're not seeing the agree on the rules. If a total global trade war breaks out, if the EU gets included and we see a lot of tit for tat, the Chinese have concluded that it might drop global trade with 70%. And that will affect not only their economy, but it will also affect their national security. Because China needs energy, they need food, and they're doing domestic reforms now to become more dependent on the global markets. That's why you will see a much more active Chinese foreign policy and backing of a multilateral system. It might not be the same as what we see today. They are worried about certain local economies too dependent on their export. The answer that they have drawn up is twofold. One is to expand domestic consumption. Of course, also find ways around the US. Maybe they can diversify and help diversifying these local economies. And the other one is providing liquidity to do big structural changes in the economy. If a total global trade war breaks out, if the EU gets included and we see a lot of tit for tat, the Chinese have concluded that it might drop global trade with 70%. And that will affect not only their economy, but it will also affect their national security. Because China needs energy, they need food, and they're doing domestic reforms now to become more dependent on the global markets. That's why you will see a much more active Chinese foreign policy and backing of a multilateral system. It might not be the same as what we see today. They are worried about certain local economies too dependent on their export. The answer that they have drawn up is twofold. One is to expand domestic consumption. Of course, also find ways around the US. Maybe they can diversify and help diversifying these local economies. And the other one is providing liquidity to do big structural changes in the economy. If a total global trade war breaks out, if the EU gets included and we see a lot of tit for tat, the Chinese have concluded that it might drop global trade with 70%. And that will affect not only their economy, but it will also affect their national security. Because
U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that similar duties could be applied to a further U.S. $16 billion of Chinese products in 2 weeks of time, while the total value of goods affected could raise to U.S. $550 billion if Beijing hit back. The Chinese tariffs apply to soybean, fruits, fish, and cars. Like the U.S., Beijing has also threatened to do a further U.S. $16 billion worth of American goods for punishment. Ma Jun, an advisor to the People's Bank of China, was quoted by Xinhua as saying that if the U.S. were to impose tariff on U.S. $50 billion worth of Chinese goods, it would shrink 0.2 percentage point from the country's headline economic growth rate, which was 6.8% in the first half of 2018. China's Commerce Ministry, meanwhile, said the trade war would affect the global economic and hurt innocent businesses and consumers. Across the strait, Taiwan isn't too worried about the economic war. The first round of the tariff that the U.S. and China imposed on bilateral imports should have limited impact on Taiwan, because the affected items account for a tiny share of the nation's GDP, the central bank said yesterday. The tit-for-tat tariff, which take effect today, has raised concerns Taiwan might suffer in light of its heavy dependence on global trade, particularly with China, which absorbed about 40% of its outbound shipment. The U.S.-China trade friction will have limited impact based on an initial estimate of items to be affected, the central bank said in a statement. The U.S. is to impose a 25% tariff on 1,102 items from China in 2 stages. The first round takes effect today and targets 818 items worth U.S. $34 billion. The bank said the second phase is aimed at another 284 items totaling U.S. $16 billion. The U.S. has not set a date for its implementation. In retaliation, China is to levy a 25% tariff on imports of U.S. agricultural products, automobile and aquatic products worth about U.S. $34 billion, starting today. It plans to introduce similar tariffs on more items worth U.S. $16 billion. Although mechanically equipment and electronic communication products are on the U.S. list, Taiwanese shipments to China are mainly intended for domestic consumption, the bank said. The first phase list does not extend to mobile phone, laptops, and other electronic products, it said. Taiwan is home to the world's largest contract marketers of electronic parts. Furthermore, the added value created by those products accounts for a small proportion of Taiwan's GDP, it said. As for China's tariff on U.S. goods, Taiwan's participation in the U.S. manufacturing industry is so low that impact is insignificant, the bank said. While chips are included in the second stage list, Taiwan firms' leadership in global semiconductor technology could allow them to emerge unharmed, the bank said. The bank added that it would pay close attention to the ongoing trade row and their impact on the nation. U.S. President Donald Trump had threatened tariff on an extra U.S. $200 billion worth of items from China, if necessary. The bank said it would also monitor global financial markets, which have had volatile capital from the emerging advanced markets. Asian currencies have weakened against the U.S. dollar after U.S. announcements on tariffs on June 15. The new Taiwan dollar shed 1.9% during the period, ranking it in the middle amongst other Asian currencies. The bank said, the nation's trade surplus and foreign exchanges reserve should help stabilize the local currency, it added. Now back to China. China's influences in the global film market continues to grow, and the country is on path to top the North American in top box offices received by 2020. But with that growth has come to more promised sides and the more dark side of the Chinese movie-making industry. In the eyes of China's Beijing officials, in an effort to lure idol-struck audiences, Chinese studios are chasing A-list stars with eye-popping salaries, something that the government has said cannot be morally justified. Authorities announced last week that actors' compensation would be chopped at 40% of production cost, but only after uproar online after claim emerged that China's biggest celebrity, actress Fan Bingbing, as you can see in the photo here, was implicated in tax-dodging dual pay schemes known as yin-yang contracts. China Alliance of Radio, Film, and Television issued guidance in the fall with the same salary cap for actors, but they were apparently ignored by the industry. Yin-yang contracts, so named for having two different but interconnected parts, one public and one under the table, also have been an open secret in China's film and television industry for years. Authorities acted only after Cui Yongyuan, a popular television anchor, rallied against the practice in May, posting online yin-yang contract involving millions of dollars and widely presumed to have been awarded to Fan. She is now under investigation. The revelation sparked widespread outrage on social media, embarrassing not only Fan Bingbing but also government officials, who are accused sensitive to publicists' sentiments. When you rub their face in mirror, they have to do something, says Stanley Rosen, an expert on Chinese film and politics at USC. President Xi Jinping's much-touted Chinese dream celebrates a confident China on the international stage, and Fan has been a dozen for entertainment representing the country on red carpet works in Hollywood and Cannes. Up to now, her Hollywood movie credits have been a mixture. She appeared in X-Men Days for Future Past and a mutant called Blink, a name benefiting her brief talking scene, and she was cast as an unnamed nurse in Iron Man 3, a US-China co-production that added sense to Fan for the Chinese market. But her international profile is safe to raise in the future US release of 355, a thriller in which she co-starred with Jessica Chastain and other well-known international stars. In China, Fan is already huge on television, film, and her multi-million endorsement, including Adidas and other well-known brands. She has also been favored by the crowd as one of the most popular actresses in Chinese recent history. Now, back to the very exciting World Cup. Did you watch the game that just happened just now? So apparently France is the first to advance in quarterfinals. France advanced to quarterfinal in the World Cup today for the second time since winning the title in home soil in 1998. They finally defeated Uruguay in the 2.0.
And maybe we're the dream, Francia campione del mondo. The dream now it's realist. Now it's realist. Because if I know the football a little, there is not one team in the niveau, the same niveau France. Another team here.
France will play the winners on Friday's second quarterfinal, Brazil versus Belgium on Tuesday in St. Petersburg.
We are very happy, very happy. We deserve the win against a very good, very strong team from Uruguay, very good team. We will.
Do you think that France can go all the way?
It depends. Next round it's Brazil, usually, or Belgium. We'll see. But usually we are good.
You don't like Belgium?
Well, we're doing good against Brazil. Belgium is a very strong team. But yes, I think we are going to go to the final.
And with that, the 2018 FIFA World Cup has officially entered the quarterfinals as 8 of the tournament's best teams and Cinderella stories fight for a chance to become the globe sensation and the soccer powerhouse. Oh, the drama. So after the second round, this round, the winners will play in the semi-final, ultimately leading to the biggest game of all Soccer-dorm, the World Cup final. After France finished Uruguay today, only 3 more games to follow. They will feature tournament favorites like Brazil, Belgium, as well as underdog like Russia and the host nation, and Sweden. And now we can watch some of the lively interviews that we saw of the fans.
I mean, I would say I think a lot of teams are underestimate Sweden as a team, and I think that we have proven over and over again that we can beat many good teams. And we beat France, we beat Mexico, Switzerland,
yeah,
and
Italy
so on.
in the qualification,
And I think Sweden is a really tough team to play against as well. And obviously England has a great team, a lot of great players, but I think they're going to have a tough time beating our big collective, so to speak.
So, which team are you rooting for? Let the festivity begin. This is Carol, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.